Stan, when you were a child, would you color within the lines?
Never called wooden lines. I was the kind of oddball kid. I enjoyed old movies from a very young age. My parents were both very young when they had us, my sister and I. I think my mother was 22. And so because of that, when I got to be of an age where she could drop me somewhere on a weekend, she would do that so she could have some time to herself because she was still in her 20s. And frequently with my grandparents. And when it wasn't, it was some place. So maybe it was an arts and crafts thing at the museum. And then one weekend it was the Lido Theater on Pico. And they were showing a W.C. Fields double feature. You Can't Cheat an Honest Man and Never Give a Sucker an Even Break. And I was alone with my popcorn for 4 hours, and this black and white majesty was happening on the screen. And if a kid at 9 years old can have an epiphany, I had one. And from that point on, I watched black and white movies whenever I could, and it usually was in the middle of the night. Unbeknownst to my parents, I would sneak downstairs, I would turn on channel 11 or channel 13, and in between used car commercials, I would watch Night at the Opera, Day at the Races, and then I learned about Laurel and Hardy, and so then I moved on to them, and then I moved on to Humphrey Bogart and Spencer Tracy. And so by the time I finished middle school and high school, I had a journal where I had kept notes of all of these black and white movies I had seen. And in my junior year of high school, I trick-or-treated at Groucho Marx's house and met Groucho. And then Groucho invited me and 6 friends to come back, and we spent the day with him, which was glorious. So no, I definitely did not color inside the lines.
Did he pass out good candy, by the way?
Well, so the 4 of us went as the Marx Brothers, and I went as Groucho. And we had memorized bits from their movies. And what happened was we were on our way to the high school Halloween party. And one of the dads said, I know where Groucho lives. Why don't we stop? You'll tell your friends that you trick-or-treated at Groucho's house when you get to the party. And we went, okay. And never figuring we'd ever see him. And so we drove all the way up to the top of Truesdale in Beverly Hills, and we rang the bell and wait. And then all of a sudden we hear yes, and we go, trick or treat. And by the way, the houses up there were, miles apart. So nobody was trick-or-treating ever. So these big giant white doors open, and it was like Valhalla because it was an all white interior, very modern. And the front of the house went all the way to the back of the house, and in the back of the house was a white wall with the sketch of Groucho from An Evening at Groucho. So there was no doubt where you were. And so she goes, oh Lord, she sees us, oh Lord. And she goes, I gotta go get something for you to have. So she departs. So now the 4 of us are standing in this little glow of the light in the portico, and we're waiting for her to come back. And Groucho's partner, girlfriend, whatever, Erin Fleming, crossed from one side of the house to the other, looked down and saw us, this diminutive Marx Brothers. And she says, Groucho, you got to come see this. And of course, he came from the last room in the house, and he starts coming towards us. And it wasn't until he got about halfway down the hall, it dawned on me that I was him. Like we had been the Marx Brothers as a unit, but as he got to me, I realized I was Groucho. And I look around and my friends have bailed. They are too scared. They're off in the shadows now. So now I'm standing right in this glow, and he's coming at me, and I can literally see my heart beating out of my white shirt. And I'm holding my little plastic cigar, and my hand is shaking. And he finally gets to the door in his beret and his cardigan sweater, and he looks at me, and he's waiting for me to say something. And in my very best 15-year-old Groucho, I say, well, it looks like I'm looking in the mirror. And Groucho returned by saying, no, you're much uglier. And I could die right then because I had been insulted by Groucho Marx. So that's pretty much how it went. And then my friends returned, and my friend John, who played Harpo, and I did 2 scenes from Coconuts and Day at the Races. He was delighted and then went on his way. And then Merv Griffin interviewed him about 6 months later, and he told the story on the Merv Griffin show, which made us, of course, so giggly happy. And then we called and said thank you, and he said, would you like to come up to the house and spend some time? And so we did, and that's the photo, and that's the autograph, and yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of almost on a dare that you were going.
It was never planned. It was all magical. It was, hilariously, in the 1970s, the city of Beverly Hills had a private phone book that was only delivered to people that lived there. And every resident of Beverly Hills was in the book. You could unlist your phone number, but you could not unlist your address. That's how the star maps were made. And then, of course, horrible things started to happen, and that was the end of that. But at the time, we just opened the book and flipped to Groucho Marx, and it said where he was living. So we knew exactly where to go.
Thinking back to that experience and how sort of this dare, this sort, I mean, it wasn't planned. How much has that shaped your career as a producer, just taking risks like that?
I don't know that shaped my career any other more than I felt like there was kismet that had happened, and that how could I not pursue a career having had this incredible moment with Groucho Marx. And I mean, I thought there was something that had happened magically that I had to pursue. And I entered college as a pre-med, flunked out of organic chemistry on my first semester of my first year, and that was the end of that. And so by the end of my 4 years, on a lark, I applied to the American Film Institute and got in, and then started in a mailroom. So my career has always sort of been shaped by not necessarily the path that anyone else expected me to take. I come out of AFI thinking I'm going to be a producer of film instantly, and then I end up not being able to get a job for 6 months and starting in a mailroom, and the mailroom was for a television company, and that just sent my trajectory of my career towards television. And so I eventually producing television movies became what was right for me, but it wasn't a choice. I have so far outlived my dreams. That little kid who was 9 years old, who was sneaking downstairs to watch Laurel and Hardy, imagined himself in the movie business, but doing something, getting to be on a set or being a sound man or a cameraman. But the idea that I would be a producer and have my own company and produce my own movies and travel all over the world to make movies and win an Emmy and Golden Globe, all that, none of that was ever in my imagination. I've gone far past what I ever imagined would happen for me. And that's my dad standing in the background who drove us. Wow. And that's Groucho.
That's unbelievable.
And he had just won the honorary Oscar, like 2 months before.
Wow, that's so cool.
And we asked him, and because the five of us really knew the Marx Brothers so well, we asked him, Margaret Dumont was always his foil. And we asked him, I don't know if you know who that is, but Margaret Dumont was in all of his movies and was sort of the straight woman.
Oh,
she was like the Mrs. Rittenhouse. She was always the woman in the highfalutin job that they would poke fun at.
Sure.
Because most of their movies threw darts at the privileged class.
Sure.
And so Groucho was always the lead that would be approached by this, woman of airs. And it was always played by Margaret Dumont in every movie. And she goes back to when they were on vaudeville. So she was a foil for them early on. And so, of course, I said, why was she so good at keeping, I don't know how she kept a straight face in that, and with the chaos around her and with being with the funniest people on the planet. And he said, well, it was very simple. She didn't get it. She never thought we were funny. and I'm sure that was true. I'm sure she never thought they were funny. I mean, there's no way you could keep a straight face with Groucho Marx, hold me closer, hold me closer. If I was any closer, I'd be behind you. How does that line happen? And she's deadpan serious.
Right. Well, it's similar with Robin Williams, Mork and Mindy.
Yes.
So I don't know how you would. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to.
Yes, but having made the Mork and Mindy movie, did my research on that. The people on that set broke every time.
Oh, they did.
Oh, yeah, they would reset and start again. Yeah, but Margaret Dumont never.
She never did.
Never.
Oh, interesting.
No. Now she had to be that good because she came from theater, so there was no take two. Now in the movies there were, but she had become their foil. They did this amazing thing. When they did Coconuts, which is their first movie, which we're going off on a big tangent, but when they did their first movie, they took that screenplay and they went and acted it out all over the country in venues all over the country. In fact, that's the crew in Denver.
Oh.
That's the crew photo from when they were performing the Coconuts movie live. Now, it wasn't a movie yet. They had never made a movie.
Wow.
They did it live in 35 cities, and the screenwriters were in the audience. And so if the jokes didn't work, they rewrote it for the next city. And if those jokes didn't work, so by the time they got to make the movie for MGM, the jokes were all killer jokes because they had performed them. It's like a stand-up getting ready to do his HBO special. They'll do, Chris Rock will do it 150 times so that every joke works. That's what they did. Now, no, obviously nobody does that for a comedy movie now, but that's why the Coconuts there's not one bit, one after another, that doesn't work.
Wow. And vaudeville was from how long to?
Well, the teens and 20s.
Okay. It stopped during the Depression?
In the 30s, yeah. I mean, when people didn't have the kind of money, but also when the talkies became big, then vaudeville ceased to have as much importance as, as the talking movies kind of replaced vaudeville.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.